Yo, what's up everybody? It's Drewberry and I got your Marvel Snap news of the week thanks to the Marvel Snap Bugle Twitter account. Definitely go follow them if you have Twitter, but if you're just on the YouTubes, I got you covered. Let's get into it. All right, so here's a pretty big piece of news that kind of snuck under the radar here. So Kraken, who has one of the higher collection levels, mentioned that the Snapshot MMR went into effect at the beginning of the season. I got confirmation on, so the second you hit Infinite, boom, that is your MMR, and that has a big implication for the next season rollover because that MMR is going to stick and you're going to be matched up against people in that MMR bracket. So it's going to impact who you're matching up if you do reach Infinite. It takes that screenshot. It also means that it doesn't really matter what happens after Infinite. So they really need to figure out or implement a leaderboard or something because I know for a fact a lot of my friends who have Infinite, they don't even care about snapping. It is just a snap fest in Infinite because it just does not matter. You don't need cubes to progress your rank and your MMR is already in a fixed position, so it doesn't matter at all. And I feel like they really need to change that. I believe they have plans to do it soon. I just thought it would have rolled out at the same time that this did, but this went first, so we'll see. All right, here's a pretty interesting question about Sandman. If you've been playing since the patch, I think it's one of the more popular decks at this moment in time. It can kind of feel bad a little bit sometimes. If you want to play multiple cards on 6, you can't. So Yumi here says, is the team happy with how Sandman currently is? I feel like the card is too powerful after its buff, as it has very few counters. Enchantress is kind of too late, basically, is what he's saying. It's also very early after the patch, but there has been an uptick in the Sandman leader combo because they changed leader recently. I've also been seeing Death Wave with leader a lot. I kind of called that in my balance patch review, but there you go. There is a bunch of Sandman and leader in the meta right now. Glenn goes ahead and says it's very early after the patch to call anything definitively. Electro Sandman is clearly a major player, but it has a healthy range of good and bad matchups. Its two worst matchups are actually both quite popular. While it's not a balanced outlier, it is gaining popularity and we're keeping an eye on it. So maybe in the future we see a power nerf on Sandman. I imagine that's how they'd approach it because previously Sandman was a 4-1. The power wasn't enough to warrant playing that card in most scenarios. Now that he's a 5-5, he's got that little bit of extra power to carry him a little bit and you cheat him out early and it's not so bad. So maybe they go the power route with Sandman, but it seems like they're just having an eye on him for now. Okay, I absolutely adore this question. This was done by Quilava Trainer, who's also a Berry Knight, goes ahead and asks, I recently watched the Ben Bro GDC talk. You can see it on YouTube for free. It's awesome. It gives insights to the design of Marvel Snap. And basically, just to summarize here, they talk about how it's important to have low amounts of text in the cards so that they're easier to understand and it's a simple card game because it's 6 minutes, right? You're 6 turns or 3 minutes, 6 turns, you know what I'm saying? So like it's a pretty fast game. You got to understand what's going on. You just got to look at the art and know, okay, this card does that. If it's like, you know, some card games can get really complex with their text and then you have to click on it, read, understand. I think Snap does a good job at keeping it simple, but there have been some changes recently that have added more text, you know, to balance the cards. So this is Glenn's take on this. It's a concern for us, but it's less that more words are bad and more about the threshold we try to stay inside, about 2 lines if possible. And that is pretty interesting. 2 lines of text if possible. Guys, we do so many custom card reviews on this channel. I'm talking about custom cards all the time. And I always try to tell people who are making the cards, keep it simple. If it's too complex, I'm not even going to look at it. And that's literally how the game is. You know, they keep it to 2 lines. That's their threshold. So I thought that was interesting. But by example, Shirley is longer now, but not too long. So they like where they put Shuri there. Regarding the series split, we are especially protective of the length and complexity of series 1 and 2 cards because we want that experience to feel welcoming and accessible for players who may not have card gaming experience, which is huge because Snap is, you know, marketed as this really quick game to just jump right into. And it is exactly that. In fact, when you started playing, you probably felt like you were unstoppable, right? Well, what they do is they slam you with a bunch of bots that make really bad decisions. You win a bunch of games and you feel like a card gamer. And the text is simple and you understand the game like that. But, you know, eventually there's more cards gets more complex and you actually start getting matched up against players and get your butt whooped. So that's a little, that's kind of how it works. Those same standards apply to Series 3 and up. It's just a line we're slightly more willing to cross there. Anyone playing with a Series 3 card is familiar enough with the game to handle a bit more complexity. However, our ideal balance changes in every series are still just the numbers when possible. They would prefer to adjust the energy and the power cost over the text. That makes a lot of sense, but it's going to happen. There's going to be interactions that are just a little bit broken and you got to change the text. So quick take on this. I think this is great. I totally understand keeping it simple. What I am worried about, though, is this kind of hints at never dropping cards down from Series 3 to 1 and 2, which is just going to create this really big bloat in the Series 3, and it's going to just feel impossible. There's no direct ways to get those cards, and I feel like eventually they're going to have to do something, right? If, you know, right now, I think there's about pushing on 100 cards in Series 3. You're looking at Series 1, I think there's about 40 to 50. Series 2 has about 40 to 50. It's something in those ranges. I think maybe let's just round it out at 125 cards in those first two series, and then 100 in Series 3, and then beyond that, I think Series 4 and 5, you're looking at like 20, 30 cards, okay? So just general numbers there, guessing. But what happens when Series 3 is like 200, 300 cards? That's going to be really lopsided. And I just don't know if that'll work. And then there are a lot of simple cards in Series 3 that you could drop down, like Patriot giving +2 power to no ability cards. That would be awesome for a lot of new players that can then build no ability decks. So anyways, I personally would like to see them slowly, very slowly, drip some of those cards down in Series 1 and 2, just to give players more options and to open it up a little bit more. Okay, going a little bit further into the infinite situation, we have Glenn also confirming that matchmaking always takes MMR into account, but once you're infinite, it no longer considers collection level. How about that? So if you hit infinite in Series 1, because a lot of people try to stay in Series 1 when they first start the game, hit infinite, and then they make a Reddit post about how easy is this game, I hit infinite on my first shot. Well, guess what? You're probably not going to maintain that same win rate, because now you're getting smacked in the face with Series 4 or 5 cards, and the whole collection just opens right up. So if you're Series 1 only, I'd like to see you get to level infinite level 200. How about that? That'd be impressive. This one kind of makes me sad, but I think they'll eventually get around to it. So it's about the game board. So the game board recently changed, and I think a lot of people enjoy it. I think it's a little fresh switch up on the game board because it's always been the same. This user says, with the updated game board, will there possibly be a new seasonal themed backgrounds? I think that'd be awesome. You know, snow, and there's snow all over, or like fall, there's leaves, that kind of thing. And then just another cosmetic that Team Second Dinner can sell and make money off of. So I think that'd be fantastic. But Nikki goes ahead and says, it's not something that's on our list right now, but we are excited to explore more with our boards in the future. So there you go. It maybe in the future. I know that's a really generic answer, but it's there. You're thinking about it. They made the one change on as a surprise to us, so I think it'd be pretty neat. Oh man, I really want to clear this one up because it seems like a lot of people don't quite understand this interaction. So the new Leech now saps the opponent's hand on turn 6. But there's a phase right before that happens, and that is when the turn actually turns over. Okay, so did you decide deliberately that Leech triggers before the final card draw? And if so, why? I think it would have been a cool compensation if Leech would consistently hit all cards in hand now that the cheating is gone. So first of all, with this, I definitely like where we... So my first take here is that, no, I think it's good that Leech doesn't sap the last card that you would draw, because that would be a huge bummer. He didn't before if you played almost turn 5, so that would almost be a buff. But Glenn goes ahead and says, it's actually the default timing for that trigger, but we preferred to keep the drawn card safe. There should be some tension for the Leech player if the game is going to continue. 100% agree. Dude, that would have been crazy for Leech. So I'm really glad that they allowed that. But basically, the turn starts, Leech saps, card draw. That's just how it goes. This is a little bit different, but I normally cover Dynamite cards on their own, but we don't have any stats or abilities for these cards, but we did get these from the patch with text, and they look amazing. This looks like Peach Momoko Echo. Got her own variant right here, which looks amazing. Adore that. It's like a Jim Lee variant, I would say, if I had to guess. Then you got Gladiator here, which is pretty neat. You got Gladiator there and here. Now, one thing that could be pretty cool about these cards is they might come with the new Conquest mode. A little tidbit that people missed in the Conquest mode with the patch details is that it said Annihilation Conquest mode. And there's a card called Annihilus that is data mine that we might see kind of soon. So maybe these cards are all intertwined to the new mode that'll be coming in July, I believe is the projection. So anyways, I thought those would be neat. Hey, if you have an idea of what their abilities, their stat line could be, let me know in the comments below. Here's an interesting one that I didn't see coming at all. But this user says, with the new America Chavez change always being on the bottom and Cable always pulling the bottom, are Cable users stuck only pulling America Chavez the majority of the time? Could there be a Cable change coming down the pipeline, maybe pulling a random card, or is this the intended interaction? Glenn goes ahead and says, against America, who isn't in the majority of decks, yeah, fair, Cable is a bit worse now. As we continue balancing, perhaps he will change. How about that? I'd love to see a change to Cable. I think he's a really fun card. And this kind of hurts him, but at the same time, you take your opponent's 6-drop that they might have been relying on drawing. But ultimately, yeah, he could use a little bit of help. Honestly, like +1 power would be totally fine. I think that'd make them even a lot more reasonable to tech into some decks. But there you go. Maybe a little Cable buff in the future. Have you ever just wanted your Squirrel Girl to summon squirrels that look just like the variant that you have her for? Or how about Bucky Barnes when he gets destroyed? The Winter Soldier actually looks like a cool variant that you might have purchased in the shop. Well, that's not coming soon, and there's a pretty good reason for it. So this user says, is it possible to have the same art styles for the cards that were generated from other cards, Bucky, Doctor Doom, etc., etc.? It'd be nice to have those Dan hips, but, you know, Glenn says it's technically possible. However, it doubles the resources our art development team needs for each card using a token, which makes a lot of sense, dude. Like, they're using a wide variety of artists, and to ask them to make, you know, variants for that, maybe they don't want to do it, you know, like leave that creative freedom to the artist. They make the cards that they want, the characters that they want. There's just a lot of complications there, I think. And then also, at the moment, this would be too inefficient for our small team to consider. We know this is a popular ask and we're exploring it for the future. The problem with exploring this for the future and giving a generic answer like that is that as more cards are released and as more variants for those cards are released, you're going to really have to play the catch-up game to put a bunch of variants out, you know, and maybe the artists don't want to make content for you anymore. So that's a little bit of an issue. I think overall, it'd be a very long time until we see that happen. But it's too bad because, you know, you look at a card like Snowguard that literally changes immediately once you get it into your hand. It's like, well, that's a cool variant that I got that I never, ever, ever get to see, but nobody's seen that anyways. Nobody owns that card. Let's not kid ourselves here. All right, and this is going to be the last one from me. I think it's interesting that Wasp is the only card in the no abilities family that isn't a starter card. What is the reason for her being so far removed from cards like Shocker by putting her in Series 3? Glenn says, from a game balance perspective, Wasp is easily the strongest of these cards. I love that because Wisp from Hearthstone, which is like kind of like a play on words with Wasp and the same stat line, it's like a little Ben Brode touch there, was like notoriously weak and weird for Hearthstone. But then you got Wasp, which is one of the stronger ones, and you'd have to agree if you play a lot of Snap, especially with Lockjaw and a lot of rotation stuff like that. However, that's within the context of more advanced gameplay than is available to new players. The other no abilities cards are also teach players the rough curve for stats that they need to know. But Wasp doesn't do that since zero cost cards are very rare. I mean, it's not like you have like Jane Foster or Lockjaw early on, so you don't really get a lot of Wasp value. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that just joined Series 3 and your first pull was Wasp. Probably felt bad, but as you accumulated a few more cards, it probably started to feel good and actually was a pretty viable and strong card. And I think Glenn goes ahead and just says that. In Series 3, players have advanced enough to appreciate Wasp and develop collections she'll improve, so acquiring Wasp is more satisfying. Couldn't agree more, but I think it's really cool that a 0/1 no abilities card in Marvel Snap can be as powerful as it is. Anyways, that's going to do it for me for the news of the week. If you want to stay up to date with the news, the data mines, and everything Marvel Snap, subscribe. I'll catch you guys next time.